In part 3, we are going to learn about team effectiveness. What factors determine whether teams are successful? There are several different models that we could look at. Let's use the input, process, output model of team effectiveness to consider some of the variables that help teams succeed. This figure is from your textbook and is based on Gladstein's work from 1984. According to this model, team effectiveness depends on 3 things: inputs, processes, and outputs. When we understand all 3, we can make better predictions about a team's performance. Input variables are the things the team or the company puts in. Things within the organization, like its culture. Characteristics of the task, like its complexity. And team composition, like size. Process variables include group dynamics and other events that influence how inputs are transformed into outputs. Things like norms, decision-making, communication, coordination, and cohesion. Output variables include how the team performs, what it produces, whether members are happy with their membership, and whether the team creates something new or solves a problem. Let's take a closer look at inputs, starting with the organizational context. First, teams need adequate resources, especially those that exist outside of the group. A scarcity of resources will reduce the probability of team success. Second, leadership and structure must be supportive of collaboration, coordination, cohesion. Teams can't function if they can't agree on roles, norms, procedures. Leadership is especially important in multi-team systems, in which different teams coordinate their efforts to produce a desired outcome. Third, a climate of trust is essential. Interpersonal trust among team members makes it easier for them to cooperate with one another. It also reduces the need for each member to monitor other people's behavior. They can devote their headspace to their job. They don't have to worry about whether other people are going to do their jobs. They can trust that those tasks will be completed. Interpersonal trust also helps create a bond between members. They all believe that they won't be taken advantage of within this team. They feel safe with the other members. When team members trust each other, they are more willing to take risks, more willing to commit to their leader's goals, more willing to accept the group's decisions. Finally, the performance measurement and reward system must be supportive of teamwork. Individuals should be evaluated within the context of the team. Not only do they need to do their jobs well, but they need to work well with others. When we learned about performance measurement earlier in the semester, we learned that many tools miss the mark. They miss measuring important aspects of the job. In a team environment, it is even more important that we make sure we measure all aspects of membership in the team, the technical aspects as well as the interpersonal aspects. We also know that individuals should be rewarded for their individual contributions. But in teams, we should also reward the entire group for meeting group-level goals. What this means is that individuals get rewarded based on their individual performance as well as the group's performance. Group-based rewards include things like profit sharing, gain sharing, and small group incentives. Now let's consider team composition. Not every employee is a team player. Given the option, some people will select themselves out of team participation. When people who prefer to work alone are required to work with other people, it can create serious problems for the team, for other members' morale and their individual satisfaction. High-performing teams are probably composed of people who prefer working as part of a group. When selecting team members, managers should consider potential members' preferences for working with other people. Do they want to be a part of a team? Managers should also consider the KSAOs, the personality, and the individual goals of potential members. It's important that every member has the KSAOs they need to do the job. Selection should pay close attention to what is needed and which potential members have what is needed. When it comes to personality traits, high-performing teams tend to have members who are highly conscientious, open to new experiences, and agreeable. Highly disagreeable members can create a lot of conflict and essentially harm the performance of the entire group. If an individual's personal goals conflict with the team's goals, it may be challenging for them to put aside their interests and do what is best for the team. In this way, it helps if individual level goals and group level goals can be aligned, but it's not always possible. Managers should also consider the diversity of the team, both demographic diversity, differences in observable characteristics like age, gender, and ethnicity, as well as psychological diversity, differences in attributes that we can't see, attributes like KSAOs, personality, attitudes, beliefs, values, education. When the work requires creativity, decision-making, complexity, it may be useful to have a great deal of psychological diversity so that we can take advantage of the different viewpoints that people bring to the table. Of course, diversity of thought can also create challenges in terms of learning to work with each other and in terms of doing the work, especially when it comes to solving problems and making decisions. If everyone has a different idea, it may take more time, energy, effort to choose the best option. Fortunately, with training and time, some of the difficulties associated with diversity become less significant. Through interactions and experience, people learn to trust one another and get the job done. The size of teams is another composition variable that we should consider. Generally speaking, teams should be limited to 5 to 9 members when possible. Larger teams tend to have more issues than smaller teams, and they don't always get more done. Within larger teams, members don't communicate with one another as much as they would in a smaller team. Cohesion tends to be lower in larger teams. It's more difficult to hold people accountable for their actions. And related to that, social loafing tends to occur at a higher rate in larger teams. The final input that I want to mention is the allocation of roles. Teams have different needs, and members should be selected to ensure that there is diversity of thought and that all various roles are filled. Managers then need to understand the individual strengths of each potential member, select members with their strengths in mind, and then allocate work according to people's strengths and preferences. The more central roles should be assigned to the people who are highly conscientious, the people who have the most experience. Again, there are multiple models of team roles. This is a table from your textbook. It lists Belbin's 9 team roles. This particular framework is popular in Europe and Australia. The plant, the person who is creative and solves difficult problems. The resource investigator, the person who looks outside the group, develops relationships with external stakeholders. The coordinator, the mature, confident person who clarifies goals and makes sure that everyone knows what they are supposed to be doing. The shaper, the one who thrives under pressure, the one who helps everyone else overcome obstacles. The monitor evaluator, the person who is strategic, discerning, critical, who sees all options and judges all options. The team worker, the person who is cooperative, diplomatic, who listens well, who helps other people remain optimistic. The implementer, the person who is conscientious, efficient, the person who turns ideas into actions. The completer, the conscientious person who finds all of the errors and mistakes and makes sure the group gets done on time. And finally, the specialist, the person who knows a lot about a specific topic, the person who can do something really well that most people can't even begin to try. Again, this is just one way of thinking about the different roles within a team. The goal for managers is to understand what the team needs and who will serve best in which role. Now let's explore some of the group processes that influence team effectiveness. High-performing teams have a common purpose, specific goals. Members have a shared mental model. They have a similar way of thinking about the way the team will work and their role within the team. Everyone is on the same page. High-performing teams also have productive norms, the informal rules of a team. For instance, everyone knows that they should show up on time, that they should complete their work on time, that they should be respectful, and so on. Members of high-performing teams identify with the team. It's something that is important to them, something that is on their mind, something that matters to them. Just as individual people need to have a sense of self-efficacy, so does a team. Team efficacy is the collective belief that the team is able to do what it needs to do and will do what it needs to do. High-performing teams have high levels of cohesion. The members want to be a part of the team. They feel connected to the other team members. Contrary to popular belief, high-performing teams do experience conflict. It's up to the leader and the other group members to make sure that that conflict is productive, that something good comes of it. A disagreement about how a task should be completed can result in choosing the best strategy, which saves time, money, effort. And finally, high-performing teams make good decisions. How do they make good decisions? One of the things that they do is avoid social loafing, which is a reduction in an individual's contribution to the group. It occurs on specific types of tasks, those in which individual contributions are pooled together, what we call additive tasks. In many of your college courses, when you have to complete a group project, the presentation or the paper or the tangible object requires that everyone pool together their different pieces of the outcome. Social loafing happens because people are sharing the responsibility for the finished product. with their fellow group members. When groups and teams work together, it becomes more difficult for administration, managers, leaders who contributed what to the final product. Social loafing is more common in individualistic cultures. In collectivistic cultures, social loafing is seen as much more offensive because it doesn't line up with collectivistic values. Take a look at the graph on the slide. The more people we add to a team, the more likely that social loafing will occur. When there are two group members, both people contribute like they normally would if they were completing the task on their own. When we have 3 or 4 group members, each group member tends to slack just a little bit. With 8, 9, 10 group members, it's much easier for individual people to hide and not put forth the same amount of effort that they would if they had to complete the project on their own. In addition to avoiding social loafing, high-performing teams also avoid groupthink. This occurs when group members try to get everyone to agree on something at the expense of accuracy. Hurry up and make a decision, for example, may produce groupthink. In the figure here, we see some of the antecedents and symptoms of groupthink. It tends to happen in groups that are highly cohesive and independent, and those that work in stressful conditions. Lots of pressure, highly cohesive, isolated from other groups means it's easy for the group to get stuck in their ways. In teams that are prone to groupthink, the members tend to be overly confident in the team's ability to make a good decision. We couldn't possibly make a bad decision with all of these smart people in the room. And of course, that's not always the case. Members also tend to be close-minded and unwilling to think outside the box. They don't consider others' ideas and they don't critique their own. So, while the group may agree, the decision is a poor one. When a team combines their inputs with their processes, they get outputs. Let's review some of the ways that we might measure the outputs of a team. Typically, we look at overall team performance. However, it is measured by the organization. We also consider the team's productivity, the quality and quantity of the product or service that is produced. We might also look at whether the team created something new or solved an existing problem. We could ask the manager or other external stakeholders to rate the team's performance or productivity or both. We could also consider the team members' ratings of the group, its performance, their satisfaction with the outputs, and their satisfaction with the experience. We can better understand a team and what it needs by understanding its inputs, processes, and outputs. Team members may work together well and may produce an excellent product, but because they don't have the resources, the inputs they need, they aren't happy and turnover is high. This model would help us identify which inputs are the issue and how we might remedy the situation. There are other models that you could use, but the input process output model is simple, popular, and intuitive. What resources are invested? How does the team take these resources and use them to produce something? And how well did they produce that something? In the next part of this lecture, we are going to learn more about developing high-performing teams.